Greetings to you viewers from across the globe. You're welcome to the show Viewpoint. I'm your host, Douye AI for Veegil Media.
Greetings to you viewers from across the globe. You're welcome to the show Viewpoint.
On the show today, we will be continuing with the election monitoring in Imo, Kogi, and Bayelsa. But today on the show, we will be paying particular attention to Bayelsa State. It appears intrigues have plagued the state with three I call them three horsemen from the APC, the PDP, and the Labour Party. We get to see how each of them are actually getting along in each other or getting along with each other in the race for the #1 seat in Bayelsa State as to who will actually handle the mantle come February 14, 2024. As the November 11 gubernatorial elections in Bayelsa State inches closer, we highlight the intense politicking that has engulfed the state as politicians battle to outdo each other, as I said earlier on, in the quest to succeed Governor Douye Diri, who is actually the present governor of Bayelsa State. Now, less than 1 month to November 11, Bayelsa State gubernatorial elections, with intense politicking, lobbying, decamping, intrigues, and power play have been the hallmark in the last few weeks, as we've been observing. We've had a disqualification attempt by the lesser court to disqualify Timipriye Silva, former NNPC chief, who has one time served as governor of Bayelsa State. Now, this chain of events came to a head with a recent court judgment against the candidature of Timipriye Silva of the All Progressives Congress, the APC. Now, the former minister had earlier escaped disqualification when Justice Iyan Ekwo of the Federal High Court in Abuja dismissed a suit brought by one of the party's gubernatorial aspirants, Mrs. Ogomade Johnson. Now, the plaintiff had urged the court to compel the Independent National Electoral Commission, by name INEC, to delist the APC and the political party and candidates also. Timipriye Silva and a list of political parties and candidates for the election, while also praying for an order of perpetual injunction, restraining Silva from parading himself as the APC's gubernatorial candidate in the Bayelsa elections, among other, accusations. Now, the former Minister of State for Petroleum Resources won the APC gubernatorial primaries held in the state on April 14th. With 52,061 votes to defeat 5 other aspirants in the election. Now, that was in the primaries. And Justice Ekwo held that Mrs. Johnson failed to prove her case that the APC did not conduct a valid gubernatorial primary election in Bayelsa on April 14, where Silva defeated David Leon, Joshua Makaiva, Festus Dumebi, Mrs. Maureen Ogbebi, and Johnson. Now, the rejected police report relied on by the plaintiff, saying it was on the duty of the Nigerian police force to monitor the conduct of political parties' primary elections, which they failed to anyway. Now, a more distracting ruling appears to threaten Silva's ambition unless there is a relief from a superior court, as another federal high court in Abuja, presided over by Justice Donatus Okorowo, on Monday, October 9, ruled that Silva, having been sworn in twice and ruled for a 5-year tenure as governor, would be in breach of the 1999 Constitution as amended to allow to contest again. Hence, the disqualification of him against the November 11 gubernatorial elections, saying winning and swearing in will make him to spend more than the 8 years or 2 terms as stipulated in the Constitution, thereby citing the Mara versus Iyako case at the Supreme Court in the suit filed by Chief Chief Justice Kolomo, Justice Okoro held that drafters of the Constitution had stated that nobody should be voted for as a governor more than 2 times, and the parties to the suited agreed that Silva had voted into office twice in the past. He further stated that the Supreme Court had ruled in the Mar versus Yako case that nobody can expand the Constitution or its scope. Hence, if Silva is allowed to contest the election, it will mean that a person can contest as many times as he or she wishes. Now, that will not be advisable in any democratic system of government. But however, the Bayelsa Governorship Campaign Council, in a statement by its Director of Media and Publicity, Perry Tukuwe, assured its supporters of victory and Silva subsequent swearing in on February 14, 2024, next year, which is just around the corner, saying the party had briefed its lawyers to appeal the judgment and was confident that the court will appeal would overturn, or rather the Court of Appeal would overturn the verdict of the lower courts, which actually disqualified Silva. Now, while alleging that the court's action was a clandestine strategy by the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, the council said it was unfazed by the judgment, adding, Sections 29 and 84 of the 2022 Electoral Act states that only persons who contested primaries of a political party had the local standee to file a pre-election matter to challenge the qualification of the party's candidates in any election. Hence, the suit filed by one Chief Dumusoi Kolomo, who is not a member of the APC and didn't contest the party's governorship primaries, does not have the local standing to sue in the matter. Now, the question now arises, you are not a member of a political party and you now come on board to sue a gubernatorial candidate. That means it's a personal vendetta here, which is against the Electoral Act, as I have just said out loud. This stand was re-echoed by the national chairman of the party, Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje, who is well known. He described the judgment as unfortunate, adding to say, we learned that the person who took the issue to the court is not qualified to do so because he did not contest with Silva. However, we are appealing, we are waiting for the judgment, and they will appeal for calm, and on that is sure. Now, the point is, amid all this, Silva appears unperturbed as he has continued with his campaigns. If he wins the elections and the higher courts rule in his favor thereafter, he will proceed with governance. But if he wins the election but loses the appeal, the APC might be compelled to field the runner-up in the primary, Leon, his former protege, who might become his nemesis. That will be quite sad on the APC's part if we look at it broadly. If he loses the election before the final judgment also, the court process becomes an academic exercise, and merely for the records, if he actually goes on to lose before the elections, the APC goes into the poll without also a candidate. And that would not be quite comfortable for this particular contender, which is actually the APC. Now, the lingering violence now is which we will have to talk about here, because recently now, because of the upcoming elections now, Nigerian army has been thrown into Bayelsa to make sure that they stabilize the polity. Now, in the lingering violence, which is still trying to raise its ugly head, not only in Bayelsa, but also in Kogi and Imo states, the two main candidates continue to fight for the soul of the states, especially Nembe areas. The Labour Party governorship candidate by name Diri, who said he was ready to correct the political imbalance in the states. Whatever imbalance this may be, we will know in the long run of the campaign, or whatever he is lucky enough to get into the #1 seat of Bayelsa State, we will now know whether he or she, I beg your pardon, whether he will actually be able to address the so-called imbalance he states. Now, he accused them of planning to use vote buying and violence to win the election, conniving with staff of the electoral body, which will not quite be a very favorable report coming from INEC, the electoral umpire. A former president of the Joy Youth Congress, Diri, and commissioner for youth in the state, alleged that while one of the parties boasted of amassing over 30 billion naira to compromise INEC officials and buy votes, and others were trying to use violence means to win the polls. Now, these allegations are quite alarming. Now, coming over to another contender, because Udeng's Diri was actually, or is actually, contending on the platform of the Labour Party. Now, coming to Douye Diri, who is a flag bearer of the PDP, he has also assured that he will not spill one life to retain his office, because every life is important to him in Bayelsa. This is a similar quote of a one-time governor of Bayelsa who emerged as chief executive of the nation. Now, anyone who wants to be governor, according to him, should not sacrifice any of you to become governor. That is expressly said by Douye Diri. Now, this three-horse race now between these parties, between Labour Party, the APC, and the PDP, we will now begin to keep our fingers crossed, our eyes open, and our ears down on the ground to listen to who would actually win indeed. Now, these three major parties are working to ensure victory for their candidates. Now, while the PDP flagged off its campaign on September 26, the APC kicked off its campaign on the 14th of October. Already, the APC's NWC, the National Working Committee, has appointed a 495-man campaign council. Earlier, we could see some short clips on Twitter where we saw Rocha Sokorocha and Ganduje alighting from the plane to actually flag off the campaign. Now, it was led by Gombe State Governor Inuha Yahaya. Now, Inuha Yahaya is has actually teamed up with Rivers State Governor to see how they can work things around. But news making around town says he is strongly backing Silva instead of his party's candidates, which is actually a fallout to the PDP presidential primary. Actually, that's where all this is coming from, supported by Atiku Abubakar against his South-South brother. However, the Bayelsa Gubernatorial Campaign Council, in a statement by its Director of Media and Publicity, assured its supporters of victory and Silva's subsequent swearing in on February 14. Now, it is our plea now that in this race in which these three contenders are racing towards, it will be void of violence, vote buying, and make sure that the rules and regulations are actually stuck to when it comes to electoral processes. And even the electoral umpire also should also, within its own bidding, stick to the T's and C's. When I mean the T's and C's, I mean the terms and conditions concerning the Electoral Act, and remain unbiased and make sure that the rightful winner actually mounts that #1 seat for Bayelsa State. Now, not only Bayelsa State, we're also talking about Kogi State and Imo State. Subsequently, in subsequent shows, we will be also talking about Imo State and Kogi State. The show is Viewpoint, and I'm your host, Odiawa AI for Veegil Media. Thanks for watching.